They summoned us when every other option had failed. The Valari Alliance, a coalition of 26 starfaring species, had once prided itself on elegance. Warfare was codified, dignified, and performed with controlled destruction. It was a gentleman's game, a ballet of fleets and drones and highly symbolic confrontations that ended with minimal loss of life and maximal posturing. That changed when the Kiroth arrived. The Kiroth did not play by rules. They consumed entire systems. Planets rendered barren, atmospheres burned off, moons cracked for raw resources, and populations reduced to nutrient paste. Diplomacy was met with silence. Peace offerings were vaporized. Negotiations were laughed at. In less than 4 galactic cycles, nearly a third of the Alliance's territory was under Kiroth control. Desperation spread like fire in vacuum. The elder races, the Arvon with their psychic tacticians, the Saraxi with their gravity-sculpted war cruisers, were crushed, not just militarily but philosophically. For the first time in millennia, they faced a kind of war that wasn't about balance or ritual. It was survival. It was annihilation. So they turned to Earth. They called it a last resort, like invoking an ancient curse. Humans had been part of the Alliance for less than 50 standard years. Technologically backward, culturally erratic, emotionally unpredictable. Earth had been granted observer status mostly as a curiosity. A wild species from the edge of a minor spiral arm. They joked about us in council chambers. Called us scrappy, primitive, accidentally clever. Then they begged us for help. It began with a message. General Kalen of the Saraxi stood before the Terran ambassador in the Grand Rotunda of Ithis 9. His gleaming silver carapace shimmered under the soft moons of the capital planet, but his voice was jagged and desperate. We request, no, we plead for human intervention. The war is lost. Our cultures are dying. You are unorthodox. Perhaps you can be disruptive. Ambassador Yelena Park folded her arms. She was a second-generation diplomat, raised among aliens, fluent in a dozen languages that no longer relied on sound. Her face was unreadable, but her words struck like iron. You want our soldiers, our ships, our tactics. We want your madness, Kalen whispered. Your asymmetry. Yelena turned to the hollow map, showing Kiroth conquest like a spreading rot. Then she tapped her comms. Contact High Command. Project Valkyrie is a go. And just like that, the humans entered the war. They expected precision strikes. We gave them chaos. The first human action was on the planet Nerix Delta, a once prosperous hub reduced to a war-blasted corpse. The Kiroth had landed massive biomass processors, towering flesh towers that drained everything organic to feed their growth. The Saraxi had attempted 3 assaults, each repelled with devastating efficiency. Then came the 7th Terran Shadow Corps. No grand arrival. No orbital bombardment. Instead, the Kiroth processors exploded from the inside out. Survivors spoke of whispers in the dark. Of invisible death that crept through shadows, sabotaged energy cores, poisoned nutrient lines and planted fear like a virus. The Terran teams moved unseen, wearing active camouflage suits, hacking the processors with ancient malware encoded in dead languages, manipulating Kiroth pheromone hierarchies to trigger internal purges. It was war rewritten. And it was only the beginning. Commanders across the Alliance reeled. At the next emergency session, Counselor Vivu of the Telari Confederacy demanded answers. You infected the processors with psychological subversion algorithms? Yes, said Captain Anwar Chin, seated beside the ambassador. We taught the machines to fear shadows. That's barbaric. No, Chin replied coldly. That's human. They had begged for our asymmetry. Now they saw what it meant. The Kiroth adapted, but so did we. Every engagement became a game of unpredictability. Human vessels were fast, overgunned, and often piloted by AI-assisted wetware interfaces that used predictive behavior modeling. Our fleets didn't follow battle lines. They scattered, regrouped, hit weak points, and vanished. Kiroth ships, designed for brute force siege, found themselves ambushed by suicide drones disguised as wreckage. Human combat engineers introduced entropy corridors, zones of electronic chaos that turned Kiroth targeting systems into random number generators. Infantry deployed weaponized memes into Kiroth hive minds, triggering existential feedback loops that made enemy units pause, question their orders, even self-terminate. We weren't winning by being stronger. We were winning by being wrong. But there was a cost. Private Daryl Stroud wrote a final message to his family after the Battle of Dravon Gate. They told us not to go in. The place was full of spores, psychic interference, all kinds of nightmares. But we didn't come out here to play by the rules. We ghosted into their lair, planted half a gigaton of EM bombs, and danced with things I don't ever want to describe again. We're coming home, but something followed us back. If I change, if I forget you, know I did this for Earth. For all of us. Not every soldier came back whole. Not every weapon left a wound that could be seen. But the Kiroth were bleeding. Then came the turning point, the siege of Varnix 12. A fortified world, centerpiece of the Kiroth war drive. Defended by planetary shields, orbital rings, and a Kiroth war consciousness embedded deep within the crust. Alliance commanders said it was suicide to attack. So humans did. But not with a fleet. Not even with soldiers. We sent a story. A signal pulse carried by a drone. A narrative virus. A memory. What the Kiroth received was the history of Earth's own genocides, its brutal revolutions, its capacity for both unspeakable cruelty and transcendent resilience. From Hiroshima to Sarajevo, from Nanking to Verdun, the Kiroth saw the worst of us, and the fact we were still here. It broke them. The war consciousness spasmed. Defense grids shut down. The orbital ring turned inward, firing on itself in a desperate purge. Varnix 12 fell in silence. The humans hadn't just won. They'd converted trauma into a weapon. Section 1 ends with the galaxy watching. In the darkness between stars, the Alliance began whispering new terms. No longer primitive. No longer last resort. Now they called us something else. The apex anomaly. And this was just the first act. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. In the aftermath of Varnix 12, where the Kiroth war consciousness collapsed under the weight of humanity's psychological warfare, the Valari Alliance found itself both relieved and unsettled. Relieved that the tide of war was turning. Unsettled because the instruments of this change were the very beings they had once dismissed as primitive. The term apex anomaly began circulating in hushed tones among the Alliance's upper echelons. It was a classification, a designation for entities that defied conventional understanding. Humans had become the first species to earn this label, not because of their technology but because of their unpredictability, their refusal to adhere to the established norms of galactic warfare. The human campaign expands. Emboldened by their success, human forces initiated a series of operations that further showcased their unconventional tactics. On the ice world of Thalcor, instead of engaging the Kiroth in open battle, human operatives triggered a series of controlled avalanches, burying enemy installations under tons of ice and snow. On the gas giant mining colonies of Zenther, they introduced a bioengineered fungus that corroded the Kirotha's organic machinery from within. These actions were not just military maneuvers, they were statements. Humanity was not just fighting back, they were redefining the very nature of warfare in the galaxy. Alliance reactions. Within the Valari Alliance, reactions were mixed. Some species, like the pragmatic Drell, advocated for full integration of human tactics into Alliance military doctrine. Others, particularly the traditionalist A.R. Quinn, viewed humanity's methods as barbaric, fearing that such approaches would erode the moral fabric of the Alliance. Debates raged in the council chambers. Ambassador Yelena Park stood at the center of these discussions, defending humanity's actions with unwavering resolve. "You called us a last resort," she reminded them. "Now you question the means by which we secure our mutual survival? Decide what you truly want." The Kirotha's countermeasure. The Kiroth, though reeling from their defeats, were not idle. Recognizing the threat posed by humanity, they initiated Project Assimilation, a dark endeavor to capture and study human prisoners, aiming to integrate human unpredictability into their own hive mind strategies. Reports emerged of human colonies being targeted not for extermination, but for abduction. Entire populations vanished without a trace. The Kiroth sought to understand the essence of humanity's resilience, hoping to turn it against them. Humanity's response. In retaliation, human forces launched Operation Echo, a mission to infiltrate Kiroth research facilities and rescue the abducted. Led by Captain Anwar Chin, the operation was a masterclass in subterfuge and precision. Utilizing stealth ships equipped with cloaking technology and AI-driven decoys, the human task force penetrated deep into Kiroth territory. They discovered not only captive humans but also grotesque experiments, hybrid creatures, amalgamations of human and Kiroth biology. The rescue was swift and brutal. Facilities were destroyed, data purged, and the hybrids mercifully euthanized. The message was clear: humanity would not be dissected, studied, or replicated. YouTube. +5. YouTube. +5. YouTube. +5. A new doctrine. These events led to the formalization of the Chin Doctrine, named after Captain Anwar Chin. It emphasized preemptive action, psychological operations, and the use of unconventional warfare to destabilize and dismantle enemy capabilities before they could pose a significant threat. The doctrine was controversial but effective. Under its guidance, human forces continued to push back the Kiroth, reclaiming lost territories and securing the safety of countless species. The Alliance's dilemma. As humanity's influence grew, so did tensions within the Valari Alliance. Some member species feared that humanity's rise signaled a shift in the galactic balance of power. Whispers of conspiracies and secret meetings hinted at factions considering measures to curtail human expansion. Unbeknownst to them, humanity was already aware. Their intelligence networks, honed through years of espionage and subterfuge, had infiltrated even the most secure Alliance communications. Captain Chin, in a private conversation with Ambassador Park, summed up the situation. They called us a last resort. Now they fear we might become the first. The conference chamber aboard the Valzar dreadnought fell silent, save for the quiet buzz of translation drones. Counselor Torvek's 3 eye stalks vibrated as he tried to comprehend the madness before him. The human had given no tactical overview, no flowcharts, no fleet disposition data. Instead, he had brought a single word: unpredictability. That's not a strategy, the Krill envoy hissed, snapping its jaw mandibles. But it works, Captain Serena Lockhart replied evenly. Ask the Zal Empire. A low rumble swept across the room as dozens of alien commanders muttered. The Zal, previously unbeatable, had not only been halted, but humiliated. Their forward bastion world, Valgrun, now displayed a rotating hologram of a human graffiti tag. A grinning skull in a hoodie holding a rubber duck. The Zal had called it psychological terrorism. Humans called it memetics. Torvek tapped the console embedded in the obsidian table. Explain what happened at Valgrun. In terms the Council can quantify. Lockhart leaned forward, unblinking. We turned their own defense grid against them, crashed half their navy by inserting false target friend or foe tags, and dropped several 100,000 leaflets with customized propaganda tailored to each species' neurological vulnerabilities. She paused. And then we played 90s Earth disco music on every planetary frequency. Silence. You broke the siege with leaflets and Earth noise. Music, she corrected. Humans don't just fight with bullets. We fight with ideas, misdirection, and just enough insanity to make you question reality. She slid a small drive across the table. Torvek looked at it warily. What's this? A training sim for your generals. Don't run it on your mainframe unless you enjoy recursive paradoxes. Behind her, a screen blinked. Transmission intercepted. Origin, Human Task Force Dagger. All eyes turned to the screen. It was a live feed. A soldier in matte black armor stood in an alien jungle, helmet off, blood dripping from a head wound but smiling. He looked into the camera. To whoever's watching, they said we were the last resort. That humanity couldn't hold a line. They were right about one thing. We didn't hold the line. We rewrote it. Static. Then a symbol appeared, simple yet terrifying in its implications. The Earth Alliance insignia, but with a single added word beneath it, in Galactic Trade Common. Adapted. Meanwhile, Operation Needlepoint. Deep in orbit above Zetrax V, a small black ops vessel known only as Sparrow's Thorn uncoiled from behind the rings of a shattered moon. Cloaked and silent, it drifted just inside radar range of a Vraxian orbital array. Inside the cramped war room, Commander Yvonne Dale lit a cigarette. The room was dark, lit only by HUD overlays flickering across her face. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Solis, tapped through code streams. We've mapped the neural patterns of Vraxian command protocols. They use organic processors. Makes them more adaptable but also more unstable. Yvonne exhaled a slow breath. Good. Begin Echo Lance protocol. Are you sure? Solis asked. If this spreads, we're not just destabilizing a command net, we're potentially rewriting cognitive instincts across an entire species. Exactly, she replied without blinking. 5 seconds later, Sparrow's Thorn fired a single invisible pulse. It wasn't a weapon. It was a concept, encoded in quantum vibrations interpreted differently by each mind it touched. To the Vraxian High Commander, it was the face of a long-lost mate whispering betrayal. To others, it was a realization that their gods had lied. One technician tore his own face off in a trance. Another laughed uncontrollably as he rebooted the life support systems with kill commands. It wasn't an attack. It was an unraveling. Aboard the human flagship, Sovereign Ashes. In the war room of the Terran flagship, Admiral Rajan Verma observed 3 different war zones at once. One on screen showed Vraxian warships drifting, crewless. Another displayed a Dalkari fleet turning their guns inward. The last showed human marines, some smiling, others crying, walking calmly through corridors soaked with enemy blood. His aide approached. "We just got word from the Zarth Council. They've declared neutrality." Rajan nodded. "Who's next?" "Everyone else is stalling. The Kresk are retreating. The Ithri are, well, praying. And the Obsidian Crown? They said they'd rather negotiate with demons." He smirked. "Then give them a demon." Later, emergency session of the Galactic Accord. The chamber, once filled with arguments and pomp, now held only whispers. Thousands of species watched from holographic feeds as a single Terran diplomat entered the center podium. She wore no weapons, no armor, just a tattered black cloak. "I am not here to threaten you," she began. "I am here to explain something." She activated a holoscreen behind her. Dozens of alien fleets, burning, retreating, collapsing. "This is not war. This is adaptation. You gave us your rules. We broke them. Not because we are better." She paused. "But because we were never part of your system. You built a galaxy on control. On stability. On predictability." She raised her hand. The symbol flashed again. "Adapted. And that is exactly why we will win." The silence after the counselor's last words was deafening. Around the hollow chamber, dozens of alien delegates sat frozen, their expressions somewhere between awe and dread. The screen that had just displayed the carnage at Belthus 9 flickered, now looping back to the final image. A single Terran battle standard planted in scorched earth, still fluttering despite no visible wind. Counselor Zell's voice trembled. "They didn't just win. They rewrote the doctrine." No one argued. Not even the Vuxen High Marshal, who had once famously declared humanity an unstable biological backwater. Not even the Kraith War matrons, who had crushed dozens of insurgent planets before Earth ever launched its first fusion drive. Because none of them had expected that. The humans hadn't fought like any other species. They had fought like beings who expected to die, but would make every death count tenfold. And they brought weapons, literal and metaphorical, that no one had seen before. Not just in warfare but in ideology. Orbit of Bells 9, aboard the human warcruiser Inheritance. Captain Arlen Dumont stood on the war deck, viewing the debris field that was once the Kraith Forward Command Fleet. His face bore no triumph, just resolve. Commander Imani tapped on the NAV glass beside him. All enemy signals confirmed destroyed or routed. No life signs except survivors and escape pods. Arlen nodded. "Deploy humanitarian drones. Let them know we don't kill for sport." "You think they'll believe us?" she asked. "No. But they'll never forget us." The phrase wasn't doctrine. It wasn't part of any Terran naval manual. But like so many parts of this war, the humans had stopped playing by old rules. The rules said don't fight in radiation zones. So humans thrived in them, adapting suits, modifying ship hulls, hardening AI systems. The rules said diplomacy should precede force. So humans sent envoys first, all of whom were ignored, mocked, or imprisoned. The rules said wars are won by superior numbers. So Earth sent one ship. Elsewhere, Galactic Council emergency session. "They sent one ship," whispered a small voice from the Gelian delegation, a species known more for its scholars than soldiers. High Lord Nezik turned his crimson eyes to the trembling Gelian. "Yes. And they dismantled an entire coalition." "How?" asked another. "It shouldn't be possible." Counselor Zell, now composed, flicked through the human war logs decrypted by Allied spies. "They don't rely on standard command hierarchies. Their AI is decentralized. Their soldiers train with real pain, not simulations. They recruit from volunteers, not conscripts. And their command structures, they're fluid. Adaptive." There was a pause. "But above all," Zell continued, "they believe in something none of us even considered worth the cost, the freedom of choice." That stunned the room. "Terran High Command, Earth orbit. Galactic backlash incoming," murmured Admiral Kira Wells. She stared at the incoming data packets from Council intercepts. "They've realized we're not just another war asset. We're an existential threat to their control." President Aiden Cross folded his arms. "Then we don't go quiet. We go louder." "Sir?" "We form our own alliance. We call it what it really is. The Free Worlds Pact. And we send an open message to every world sick of playing puppet to ancient empires." And if they retaliate? Kira asked. We remind them of Bell's 9. Transmission broadcast, galactic wideband. The message came in every language, every frequency, every translation algorithm. This is Earth. You once called us the joke, the primitive, the unstable. The speaker was a human civilian, just a farmer from Mars. His face was sun-worn, his eyes clear. But when you called on us to die for you, we answered. We turned the tide. Not because we wanted glory, but because we protect our own. Behind him stood images of Terran medical ships rescuing alien wounded, of human engineers rebuilding devastated outposts, of AI cores interfacing with alien tech not to sabotage but enhance. The message ended simply. We don't follow your rules anymore. We follow what's right. Council war rooms, 6 weeks later. They came. World after world. Not in war but in defection. An Encari cruiser crossed into Terran space and asked for asylum. The once proud Velkarn hierarchy collapsed overnight after its merchant class publicly aligned with the Free Worlds Pact. Even Kraith military commanders began to question orders, refusing to fire on relief ships. But not all bowed. Some rose in rage. An emergency coalition of remaining loyalist species formed a last-ditch fleet to destroy Earth before its influence could spread further. They called it the Purity Armada. And Earth sent 2 ships this time. Just 2. One was a war cruiser. The other, a diplomatic vessel. The war cruiser never fired a shot. Because the diplomatic vessel arrived first, and every soldier aboard the Purity Armada received a personalized data packet. It showed their own children, liberated from state orphanage programs, now smiling in free-packed schools. Their own sick, healed by human medical teams. Their own people begging for peace. The Purity Armada turned around before reaching Earth. Epilogue, Terra Nova Station. Ambassador Yao Qin stood before a crowd of mixed species, beneath the banners of the Free Worlds Pact. He spoke calmly, powerfully. The galaxy thought they could summon us as a last resort. They believed we'd break under pressure, conform to their commands. He looked around the auditorium. But humanity has never been good at following orders we didn't write ourselves. A ripple of laughter. Yao continued, we don't seek war. We don't seek control. But if you threaten the innocent, ours or yours, we will respond. Not with your rules. With ours. The banners unfurled, revealing the pact symbol. A star split into 3 points, peace, choice, and resolve. The crowd erupted in applause. Because the joke species, the backwater primitives, had not only survived, they had changed the entire galaxy. End of story. Fire if this tale of human defiance and destiny moved you, don't just vanish into the void. Subscribe to the Void Narratives and join the resistance. There are more stories to uncover, more battles to witness, and more truths to tell. The stars are watching, will you? Milky Way.